I'm going to give you some dating tips from my experience as a 4-year sober sex and love addict. Hey, I'm Riki B, relationship coach and fun columnist with Things Hope For. Ladies, we're going to get straight into it. Before we get there, my testimony. I actually realized that I had an issue with sex and love after dating this guy who we ended up moving in together. And that whole story was crazy. But realizing that when we broke up, that the relationship hit a little harder than it should have. I went to start seeing a therapist, which I highly recommend. If you want to get ready for dating, first tip, go to therapy. Let them unpack and unearth all the things. I highly recommend spiritual therapists who understand our beliefs. It's very different to talk with someone who understands what they learned in a book versus someone who has a direct understanding of the Holy Spirit. So in that therapy session, I'm sitting on the couch, sharing all my stuff, spilling all my tea, and she says to me, have you ever heard about or learned about sex and love addiction? And of course, I clutch my pearls because what? That's not me. That's not my problem. And as she starts to unpack, there's a questionnaire online, and we'll drop that link in the comment section where it kind of has 21 questions that you answer. If you answer more than a certain amount of them, then you probably have an issue. It's not a diagnosis tool. And yeah, your girl's probably like 18 out of 21. So it was given you got a problem. And in the process of having to like deal with that and the stigma that I felt like was going to be around it, at that time, the only person I'd ever heard be a sex and love addict was Eric Benet, Lenny Kravitz. Who was it? Was it whoever was married to Halle Berry? And people wrung him through the mud. Our community was like, he ain't no addict. He just can't have enough. And he just cheated on Halle Berry. And I could remember the feeling of if this man was vocal and outwardly speaking about it and people had no time and compassion for him, what was that going to look like for me, especially as a Black woman? So it was really difficult. I don't think that I really took it to heart or I took it as serious as I should until my ex came a-knocking. And when I realized that even in it being over, I didn't want it to be over. I didn't know how for it to be over. I stayed longer than I should have, and it caused so much more headache and hassle. During the time that he went to school, I asked like if we were on a break because I couldn't see him often, and he didn't think that we were on a break, and I wanted to get my needs met. And he couldn't do that from far away often in the way that I desired, which now I realize was because it was insatiable and because I had issues with the frequency and the amount. And I will say it's not the issue of insatiable or frequency because God gave us a desire, okay? He did not give us all of these beautiful tools and equipment and desires for us to not use them. It was the fact that it became unhealthy because it had no parameters. It had no requirements to be anything other than that. And when I did the inventory, they tell you to do inventory of like all of your wrongs. And when I did my inventory, it's like, yeah, you literally weren't attached. So with sex and love addiction, it's not the one thing. For me, it wasn't that it was like this multiple slew of partners. It was if we were having a physical relationship, we had no emotional relationship. And if I had an emotional relationship, I did not have a physical relationship. So I could be in a 4-month, I love this man, he my husband, we gonna be so good together, and we never slept together, barely kissing, hugging, cuddling, that's it. And if I was sleeping with somebody, it could be 4 months, and do not call me past 9 p.m. Like if it's 7:02 a.m., why are you texting me? Why are you calling me? If you need something, I'm not 911. Don't reach out to me. It was very cut and dry. And with that dichotomy of loving so hard on people who weren't the people to be in love with, and then not loving people and giving them just a physical part of me and honestly discarding them and treating them like trash, it made for a very ugly savage. When they talk about savage, y'all don't know savage, okay? If you only knew, it was the most reckless abandonment of people. And when I got to this place of knowing God and being in a cleaner and healthier environment, I have only been in a place of healing and whole and really like refined and redeemed for a year. So I know I have been out here doing my work for 4, but when people talk about like, how long have you been single, or what has single life been like for you? I can only count the last year, because I know everything. I know God. I know how he loves me. I know how he saw me. I know how he was trying to save me and protect me, and I wasn't listening. I know it all from the year. And when I think about it now, the reckless treatment of his sons, and that there were girls like me who made the guys who probably hurt you and mistreated you because of not caring about them as a person. All that to say, I learned a lot. I've been through a lot. I got the tips. I understand. And because of this kind of more testosterone fueled desire or lifestyle, I relate a lot more with guys than women. The girl who's always a homeboy, but I've had access to men in a way that many people don't. And not just always physical, because again, when you loving them and leaving them, you know a lot of people. And because of this kind of myriad of experience, I realized that I know more about dating than I thought. And in this healing and in this journey and all of the resources and community and support that God has given me, I now want to share it, because I know my story is not the only one, because we sing about it. We have music videos and TV shows and movies, and I see it and I'm like, love addict, sex addict. So again, not calling nobody nothing, but it is in our culture, and I want to shift the tide, especially for believers, especially for women, and especially in 2025, because it's time. Whether you're new to dating or getting back out there or just looking for something real, these tips are from a relationship coach who has done the work and knows exactly how to help you show up your best self. I might be looking down at my phone because I'm trying to make sure I don't miss none of these fire tips for y'all. But point number 1, curiosity kills a counterfeit. Asking curious questions is my number 1 tip. I can't say this enough. The best way to show up in a situation and trying to figure out who somebody is, where they stand, and what they're looking for is to be curious, not an investigator. Those are 2 separate things. But curious questions will stop somebody who isn't serious. You're asking them, wow, how do you see yourself growing in your faith in the next year? If they ain't growing in their faith, they're not going to answer. So asking questions like that would just give you a little insight on who a person is and what they're kind of into. I like to say you have to balance chemistry with compatibility. There is a clear understanding that when a man is fine, sometimes that's all that there is. And I would love to see y'all drop in the comments. How many times have you been on a date, hung out, got to know a fine man, and there was nothing there? He was just a dud, a doo-doo head, an airhead, a space cadet, but a fine one. We don't want that. So knowing that you want that balance between, yes, he's fine, but can he hold the conversation? Because looks will fade. And God is such a great and loving Father. He will provide you a man who you find fine and loves to hold a conversation with you. A practical tip, ask yourself, do I like them or just the idea of them? Again, back to being on a date with a fine man and he's sitting there, he's not saying nothing. If you can't be curious and get more out of him, then probably you like the idea of him. An example of a meaningful question could be, what is something that made you smile today? When you're thinking about your future, what's one thing that terrifies you? What's one thing that if it never happened in your life again, you'd be uber disappointed or extremely satisfied? Questions like that allow you to dig a little deeper, and I've learned that you stand out when you ask the guys real questions. I don't know how many times I see on the dating apps, ladies, don't just send me one-word answers. I don't like that. If you can't hold a conversation, I'm not interested. Baby girl, you about to push through the mess when you asking these fire, meaningful questions. And if you don't know, steal my ChatGPT prompt of, hey Chat, you are suave, you are sexy, you are collected, and a believer in Christ. What would you say to someone to get to know them better? Give me 10 meaningful questions, and Chat will help. Number 2, be a boundary queen. Wear your crown, ladies. I'd like to think that boundaries don't push people away. They pull the right ones closer. Boundaries actually look like in dating the understanding that you are going to make some compromises. Boundaries are not just for you. They're for the other person to be able to decide if they're realistic or not. That does not mean you compromise in the boundary by settling. You just understand that, for example, if you don't like the idea of washing dishes in a relationship, talking about me out loud, you could say to someone, my boundary would be, I would love to have a housekeeper in the future so that they'll wash our dishes. And they get to say to you, no. And you can talk through why. Is it budget? Is it your lifestyle? Is it your upbringing? What does that look like? So that you are not making barriers on accident. Setting boundaries fosters respect and emotional safety. Your boundaries around your physical being, aka no kissing, we're not having sex, we're not doing these things. Those boundaries matter and they allow you to feel safe. A person who does not honor your physical boundaries, they gotta go. It's just that simple. And you would know if they're gonna honor them because you wouldn't have to say them. If you're not kissing, they're not trying to kiss you. If you're not trying to spend the night, they're not gonna invite you over to spend the night or ask to come over to your house to spend the night. So when you are a boundary queen, ruling on your throne, having your royal court, when you say something, it goes. And if you want to hear from your subjects, then you listen and you adapt accordingly. A practical tip, identify your non-negotiables before you start dating. Girl, do not wait until a man is around and then be like, actually, I don't think I want to do that. No. Know in advance. Spend some time while you're single, preparing yourself for what is it going to look like when I come up against a non-negotiable. Now, let me say this. It is hard. And the finer they are, the harder it is to stick to the boundaries. Take that from me. I've just been trying to really keep to my boundaries in these last couple of weeks. And it's not easy. But please know God loves you. And He is not here to condemn you, but He will convict you. And He will share with you why He wants you to have that boundary in the first place. And above all else, take your boundaries and non-negotiables to God. He will fact check them and make sure they're not coming from a hurt place, but they're coming from a healed place. Non-negotiable as a believer, dating a man who's poly, who's interested in all these girls, who wants to be in all these relationships. I don't know what happened in the 2020s. But everybody think that they can have everything. And no, we're not doing that. That died in the Old Testament. We're done. It's done. A non-negotiable could be a man without a car. I'm not saying be superficial or materialistic. If you live in New York, get over it. But if you're living in an area where he needs to be able to have transportation to get to work, to provide for himself, and he is not able to do so with public transportation and saving thousands of dollars to do so, then you don't have to deal with the idea of someone doing that. It could be smoking. There are girlies who are out here okay with all this kind of hoopla and shenanigans. That's between you and God. I'm not your God. I'm not going to tell you, but I will say cut it out. But a non-negotiable could be smoking and understanding that that is in any form or facet. Cigarettes, weed, vape, whatever. Because if it's something you don't like, don't deal with it. But know that in advance because it's going to come up. It's 2025. People doing a little of everything. Number 3, one of my favorites, flag on the play. Green, red, and yellow flags. Now, I'd like to start with defining your flags. There is a beautiful understanding of what we collectively as a culture say are red flags, but what if that doesn't matter to you? Now, I will say abuse, disrespect, narcissism, all of those kinds of things are absolutely red flags that you should not play around with. But what about he burps at the dinner table, or he blows his nose while we're eating our food. Those can be your red flags. And if someone else doesn't like that, that ain't your relationship, so it doesn't matter. But you also should know your green flags. Green flags are the things you're looking for in a partner. I would like to encourage you, pay more attention to green than red. If you are only looking for red flags, you will miss all the green flags. And I love to add in yellow flags. Yellow flags are where you have an opportunity to stop and get curious. You get to ask questions like, okay, so maybe they don't want a family pet. You get to ask them why. Did they not grow up in a household with a family pet? Do they think it's a waste of money? What are their thoughts around it? Because people change. You know how many times I've met men who's like, you never drive in my car. This is a specialty car. Drove all of them. Drove every car. So if I was leaving it up to them, telling me what they do or do not do, once you get in a relationship, we change. And I don't know how many times as ladies, I'm not doing that for no man. And blah, 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 blah. And then we do it. So I say all that to say, be mindful of what you're saying are your flags and asking questions around your flags to find out where people are and why they feel that way. And then you can start to use them. I am the queen of pattern spotting. It's one of my new superpowers from my past, is that I am very acutely aware. A red flag for me is if you disappear. I am very aware from my olden days that people will be in relationships or married and they'll disappear after 5 p.m. You send in a text at 5:02, it's dead until the next morning at 9:18. That's because he's at work and he can message you now. So being mindful of things like that, like why do we not talk at these times? Why is the communication kind of shaky? I like to call it foggy. Why are you foggy? Why don't I know where you are, where we stand, what we're doing? Looking for things like that so you can kind of avoid them. Always talk to a trusted friend or wise counsel about what they see before you move forward. I learned in my dating journey to restructure how I was dating. So this is what I used to do. I would meet a guy, I'd go out with him on dates, AKA at a restaurant in front of a candle. We're real cute, it's real intimate. And I'd probably date that person for a couple of months before they met a friend, or let alone any piece of my family. And then by the time they met my family and friends, my people did not like them, but I was already in it. Y'all gonna love this man because I do. And I realized in getting healthy and healing, I wanted to flip that upside down. I ask of every guy that I'm getting to know to meet my squad first. And I do things like community dates. Community dates are just when you hang out with 5 or more people at a non-intimate location. Dave & Buster's, the library, the movies. And you essentially just go as a group. Doing this allows your friends to kind of pre-vet before you have an emotional attachment to a person. So when we're talking about flags, they get to see, girl, he was not wearing a stylish outfit. That's definitely a yellow flag because you could change that. But I could just be looking at how fine he is. I'm not noticing that he got a crease in his Air Force Ones. You just don't know, you know? So your friends would know. And I will say that a quick suggestion on how to find wise counsel would be ask people at your church, ask your friends who are serious. Not everybody is cut out or qualified to be wise counsel. The key with wise counsel is these are people who get to correct you, who get to challenge you, and who get to change you. You are going to be a completely different person because of wise counsel. I have a spiritual father and mother, and I walked up to them at church because I love their marriage and how they showed up. And I asked them, can you please be my community? Because I didn't see that. It wasn't mirrored or mimicked for me. So maybe you're not as bold to walk up to someone. However, you can serve on communities at your church. You can volunteer in your community, sit on a board for somebody's organization, and get around people who you admire and who you trust. And when you're ready, you can ask. And I'm sure they'll say yes. And in the event they don't say yes, find someone else. It's that simple, it's that easy. In spotting patterns early, you're going to be looking for things that they definitely stand out. A pattern is a pattern for a reason. So let's say for love bombing, everything is hot and spicy and fiery in the beginning, and then they just go stale. You notice that the communication went from 100 to 6, and you really don't want it at 100. When you're getting to know somebody, it should feel electric, but it shouldn't feel like being electrocuted. You should feel some chemistry and some excitement, but it should not feel overwhelming. Texting 100 times in the first couple of days that you met somebody is a really easy way for them to even accidentally love bomb you, in which the next couple of days they're busy and there's no text, and now you have an emotional attachment to a lot and you're getting a little. When we think about bleeding people, people are really out here hurting, y'all. And hurt people. It is not always as easy to see a bleeding person, but there are some really good indicators. If you're on a dating app and a guy's profile is in all caps about the stuff he doesn't like, don't match with that guy, even if he's fine. He's not well. And you know it, he knows it, we all know it. Bleeding people are going to bleed on you. They don't often know they're bleeding. They're trying to protect themselves because they have a boo-boo, and they don't want you to hurt the boo-boo. And you could unintentionally hurt them, and more importantly, they could unintentionally hurt you. And last but not least, the weirdos. Y'all know a weirdo. He stands too close to you when you're at an event. He in your DMs saying really crazy stuff all the time. You block him and he may call you from another number. Don't. If you don't feel comfortable, don't talk to a person, period. Full stop. Boundary. Put your crown on, queen. Because if you show more grace than God has asked you to, it could unintentionally be communicated as attraction or intention, and you could be feeding to a weirdo some desire that they don't know that you're giving them or that you don't want to give them. And it also avoids you accidentally or intentionally manipulating someone into giving you attention and affection you know you don't want anyway. There are a lot of beautiful men out there who will call you beautiful and queen and grand rising. I just found out about this whole grand rising thing. I literally got my first text yesterday and I was like, ugh. But y'all like that, so I'm not judging y'all. What I'm saying is, if you don't like that man and he is waking up trying to communicate with you and get to know you, and he a little weird, but you like getting grand rising texts, don't use that man. Please. It's not cute. And we got to keep it cute. There's so much to say about SLAA, which is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, and going to meetings and going to celebrate recovery. But short and sweet is, if you do believe that there are some unhealthy tiddlywinks or tidbits of your dating life, absolutely ask the questions and seek out the information. I am not calling anyone an addict. I can't speak for anybody. I am not a medical professional. But what I will say is, unfortunately, in our Black culture for women, it is often sexualized, that we, because of our bodies, our shapes, our lips, our hair, our colors of our skin, people objectify us. And it's in our music, it's in our movies, it's in our clothing. And we forget that we still have rights and autonomy. And because of that, a lot of times it goes unnoticed. And for me and my story specifically, it was just, oh, you like to date, you're getting to know people. Yeah, you're in love, you're down bad. But now we have language, love bombing and codependency and those things I had no idea about when I started the journey. I still don't have a lot of language. So I want to give grace there for myself and for others. You don't have to know it all. There are people who know a lot more than you, and they will walk you through what language they have. God has been chasing after me my whole life. I did not grow up in a church. That is not my story. You all are going to see that in one of the podcast episodes with the girls. That because of that, I didn't know Holy Spirit. I had no recollection or understanding of God's protection and his peace. But he's been on my back this entire time, from inappropriate behavior, dating a guy who I didn't even want to date, but I didn't want to be single for the season that I was single in. So started dating him. Even with my ex, like the relationship literally rolled into a relationship because I met him. He was fine. I decided I wanted to date him. And as we were hooking up, and I'm going to say hook up because we girls, we grown. We could talk about this, y'all. But as we were hooking up, I essentially like gave him a key because I didn't want to feel bothered with opening the door to let him in my apartment. So then he moved in. I mean, this is probably like 2-3 months into us knowing each other. And then we were a full-blown married couple at that point with no ring, okay? I'm cooking, taking food to his job. He coming home and we arguing. It was just crazy. There were great parts and there were horrible parts. And I learned the great parts was what was supposed to happen in the confines of marriage. And the horrible parts are what happened when you do it before you're ready and you're married, because it's ugly. When we were dating, I just struggled to be a girlfriend. I had a really hard time being faithful, and not that I was cheating, but I didn't care about getting attention from other people because it felt harmless, but it wasn't to him. It actually was really damaging. When he asked me to marry him, I didn't know that he was asking because it felt foolish and it didn't look like what I thought it was supposed to look like, so I didn't take it. And it was actually my best friend, Chili, who does the fashion column, who said to me, girl, that man asked you to marry him. Like, what is wrong with you? And I couldn't get it. I couldn't do like the normal basic things. I wasn't really like emotionally available. I was coming in the house whenever I wanted. I don't think I just shifted the mindset. There were like certain things I was doing that I knew were wifely now, but I didn't know then. But for the most part, yeah, no, we weren't good. And when we broke up, it was difficult because like he went away to school. I moved back in with my mom to purchase my first home. And the intention was that like he'd go to school, I'd get the house, and we'd move back in together once he finished up. And he had like a year and some change left. So it's like, okay, I'll stay with my mom, stack up money, and then we'll like purchase a house. Well, that's not what happened. He didn't break up. He didn't acknowledge a break. He just got weird. And he stopped texting or stopped calling, or he pop up on me and hated it. Hated it. And I think it was when, like I said, we got back together and then we broke up again because he pocket dialed me while he was talking to some girl. I literally don't know what he was talking to her about. I just heard her voice. I was irritated. I stayed on the phone for longer than I should have, trying to hear what he was going to say. And it broke me. And I mean like sobbing on the floor, uncontrollable crying. Think that girl from Love is Blind when she broke up with Ramses and she was really down bad. It was that. And my mom found me and she was like, you have to go talk to the therapist again. And that was when it was like, okay, what does this look like? How do I go to a meeting? And in the recovery program and process, for like alcoholics and narcotic addicts, they'll tell you to do like 90 meetings in 90 days. It's nothing like that for behavioral health, behavioral addictions. Like gambling is technically a behavioral addiction. Overeating is a behavioral addiction. Love, fantasy, codependency. So there's not like a set structure of meetings for that. So I was really struggling. And I was struggling even more because I didn't have my drug. So it was really bad. It was really hard. And that was like the start. But we put a pin there because I met a guy maybe a few months later. And I thought, oh, because we're not doing anything physical, we'll be fine. Y'all, I was madly in love with that man, and he was not the man I should be in love with, okay? Let's just say that. And he was madly in love with me. So it was a beautiful relationship, but it was horrible. It was beautiful for broken people. It was beautiful for toxic people. And in dating him, I mean, shoveled my car out in the snow, made me breakfast in bed, rubbed my feet, greased my scalp, whatever I wanted, he was doing. But living in the basement of his sister's house with no real like home of his own. And it was fine because it's like, oh, it's a rebound. But it wasn't, because I became attached to that guy. When I finally purchased my house and I moved into my home, I had a party. He's a friend of a friend. He came over and he was like begging to stay. And I realized then, like, it's not just me I'm affecting when I don't heal, it's others. And I'm dragging along these broken people with me because I'm not ready to like commit to my healing. I did that and worked on myself and was by myself for maybe 2 years. Then the pandemic hit. And we all were struggling during the panini, okay? We all had the apps. We were all talking to all the people. I met a guy. It was fantastic. We did our quarantine. We were cute. He came over. Y'all, for the first time as an adult, because we had talked for like months without seeing each other, finally got to see each other, I understood like what it's like to feel in love when you lose your virginity as a grown woman, because I love that man. And I didn't realize when things shifted, because let's be honest, there is a little switch in a man's brain that once they hit that conquest, it's not as exciting anymore, which is why you gotta lock them down in marriage with vows and commitment, because they will leave once that light switch is off. They forgot what was in that room, girl. They don't care. They don't want to go back. And he cut the light off for me. And it was just different. Everything was weird. Everything was different. And I was a mess. And I did not understand why I was a mess. And it wasn't until unpacking in therapy and with my girl, Chili, who should be my therapist at this point. When I make it, girl, I'm paying you because you've been holding me down, okay? But we were talking and unpacking, and it's like, oh, this is what girls experience, because that was not my experience. I knew there was a problem when I got healed and better, because my experience with losing my virginity was I wanted to date this older guy who was in college, and I was going to college, and I didn't want to date him inexperienced. So I found some high school boy who was like a freshman, maybe not, I don't know, old enough for us to still be legal. And that man loved me down bad, carried my books to class, just a beautiful boy. I was wrecking these boys, y'all. It's not funny, but it's really sad to think about it now. I'm so sorry. I made my amends, but if you're watching and I didn't get a chance to make my amends with you, this is my amends. I apologize for hurting you and for being a mess. But yeah, he came over. It was this whole crazy thing. It was done. He wanted to cuddle. I didn't. And the guy I was interested in was actually a friend of his. I found out later. He was actually like his mentor, like in like a Big Brother program. And he saw us together, like just hanging out. And I wasn't even like sad, fazed, bothered. So when I look back, while I finally got to therapy and I realized like with this guy I finally fell in love with, and now we're having like this beautiful romantic moment, it's like, oh yeah, because you didn't have that. All that to say, I learned a lot. These tips are from a relationship coach who has done the work and knows exactly how to help you show up your best self. Tip 4, the power of being single. I don't believe that singleness is a setback. I truly believe it is a setup for something great. I remember being like angry when people used to ask me, why are you single? And it's like, what do you mean, why am I single? Because it felt like such there's something wrong with you, or the stigma that like it's less than being married or being in a relationship. That was until I got to travel the world. And I realized that as I healed and got to this place of this 1 year, real sober, real healthy, real healed, after the 4 years of all of the mess, that there is so much that you can do in being single. I've gotten to swim with stingrays in 6 different countries. I've gotten to eat some of the weirdest food. I've had cow's tongue, and you shouldn't. It's a crazy experience. But I know that there is so much power in that, because I would not be able to do it. And I hear from my married friends in my community all the time, once you have babies and a husband, you have to run that stuff through somebody. And we know this in the Bible that Paul talks about, like you get to chase after God. And I know right now, for those of you who are watching this and they're like, she got all this advice, but she's single. How am I going to listen to her? God is not punishing me in being single. If I was in a relationship, I can assure y'all I would not care about my single people. I would be with my man. So I believe that God has my person reserved for me to do this work. And I believe that there are things that you have to do, that he has called you to, that he has purposed you for, that once you get in a relationship, we all know it. You don't do the things the same way that you used to. And until we are locked in with God first and being able to keep him the center, sanctification can't turn into unification with your partner without you having a solo experience on your own. So enjoy that power. It is a time for self-discovery and growth. Oh my goodness, I used to only eat plain chicken. No sauce, no seasoning, nothing. If I was eating a hamburger, nothing on it. A hot dog, nothing on it. I just told you I had a cow's tongue. While traveling, I realized, when else am I going to get this chance? And I took on that when in Rome, do as the Romans mindset. And I've eaten all over the world, all kinds of food, weird stuff, bugs at least once. And it really opened up that I like more than I think I do. And for years, I was probably like 25 before I had my first Chick-fil-A nugget dunked in sauce. Like, that's crazy. But for years, I've been robbing myself of experiences because I thought one way. And once I realized I could think anyway, I gave myself chances, and I want you to do the same thing. You can embrace this season as this opportunity for self-discovery by taking yourself on dates, going out with yourself. I have an alarm every night at 8:30, date night with Jesus. And depending on my mood, we're either going out for dinner or we're eating in the house, and it may be a prepared meal or a microwave one. But we sit together and we eat and we talk about our day and we share, because if I'm preparing for a partner, I have to prepare with the one who loves me more than anybody else on this world would. And I want that for you. If you're not at the place yet of going on solo dates, I get it. The movies on Tuesday in the morning is the cheapest time you can go. You don't have to go on a Saturday night if you're not ready. Go on a Tuesday to a matinee. Take yourself to a play. The Kennedy Center does plays and concerts for free on Wednesdays in DC. There are so many opportunities for you to enjoy your life. I went to a mocktail class at the library. Do whatever. Figure out what it is that you like. Take your time and give yourself grace. A practical tip, of course, would be to schedule your solo dates and your date nights with Jesus, but learn about your likes and dislikes and the values that you have. I used to think I liked so many things until I was in that relationship and realized I didn't. Or that I didn't like so many things until I was in a relationship and I realized I did. I learned to drive stick. I didn't care about driving a stick, but then I was watching all those crazy, scary movies, and the ladies would jump into a car, and it's like, y'all, if that car was stick, she'd be dead. And then I realized I don't want to be dead. So I learned how to drive stick. But if I didn't get to a place of curiosity and discovery, I wouldn't have even given myself chances to try new things. So learn what you like and what you don't like. And the best way to do that is to get out there and try. I like sauces. I never thought I would be a girl who says that. I like a sauce on everything now. Give me 4 sauces. Bacon jam? Who knew about bacon jam? A marmalade, a sweet and savory something. I could go on and on about sauces. I'm gonna stop. But I did not know I liked those things until I started going on dates by myself. And I think it was one time I just forgot to tell the waiter all of my 27 complicated pull these things off my meal menu items because I was having so much fun that when I got my plate, I had to just eat it. And I ate it and I loved it. And I want that for you too. If you're ready for your solo date life, we have events for you. I literally get to curate a calendar of events for you every month of things that I'm going to. And I also will let you know when I'm going. So maybe we can link up and hang out. Because, hey girl, how you doing? If you don't see stuff that you like, this is the time to tell me. I don't know you yet. We not best friends yet, but we will be. Tell me in the comments what you're looking for. We've had hikes, we've had candle making, we've had networking events. So make sure you're dropping in the comments what you like so that I can curate a list of events that'll be perfect for you. And now, drum roll please. Number 5, intentional dating. Get clarity over confusion. Now, I like to think that I'm like a crusader for this new intentional dating movement. Peep Off the Sidelines, the book. Info will be in the details. But I say that to say I would love for people to know who they are, what they want, and where they're going. I feel like if you've heard anything as a pattern tonight, it would be knowing what you like, knowing what you value, and knowing what you dislike. I believe that intentional dating is very different than just dating. So let's start there. Intentional dating is knowing exactly what you're going into, what you're getting into, and what you're trying to get out of it. There are times where we will go out with someone like we talked about earlier, who's just handsome or fine, and we like his style, but there's nothing there. He's just a little space cadet. And intentional dating is kind of a little slowed down, snail's pace version of the dating process. I don't use the word date when I'm getting to know someone. I use get to know. If I am not in a committed monogamous relationship or on the fast track to it, I'm not dating a person. And I would like to encourage everyone to kind of think that way too. We all have a mutual world understanding of what dating means, but men and women date differently. Men date to get to know. So they will take you to dinner. They will spend money on getting to know you, but that doesn't mean that they're as invested. And as women, if he takes us to a fancy restaurant and we eating this 5-course meal and everything is fire and his outfit's good and he's smelling like $1,000,000, we get attached to the idea of that person and that experience. And then we're in a place where we're kind of stuck, where we're disappointed if it doesn't pan out and it doesn't go further. Intentional dating gives you kind of that step back. Take someone out with a few of your friends to Dave & Buster's, to the mall and do mall walking. Go to the library and challenge each other to find a book that represents what you think you know about a person. It could look like anything, but the plan is you give yourself the space and time to actually know if you like that person before you commit. I'm actually coaching this guy, and we're coaching through what my therapist shared with me, that you go on a date that matters to you. I used to hate going to dinner dates. I don't like the sauces. Remember, it was really difficult. And she asked me, well, what would I want to do? And I'm going to ask you the same thing. Go out and get to know someone doing things you want to do. You like hiking? Go hiking. You like reading? Go to Barnes & Noble. Pick books with each other. If you like those things, plan meetups and get to knows around those things. Ask intentional questions early on. We kind of talked about meaningful questions early. I like to say, play the game 21 questions. In the 21, you choose 8 questions. Any more than that, it's just overwhelming to a guy. Don't do it. But you choose 8 questions, and of those 8, some should be chill, some should be medium, and some should be deep, and you getting to know a person. So if you could listen to one song on your playlist on repeat for the next 4 months, what would it be? All the way down to what are your fundamental thoughts about your wife and her role in a household? But you blend those in with what's your favorite pizza topping? If your mom had given you any other name, what would you have wanted it to be? Fun stuff. And you go back and forth in good banter, getting to know each other. Then you'll get to see who a person is without overwhelming them. Like I said, don't interrogate. Be curious. The last tip of that, I would say, would be have a goal for your meetups. Maybe it's your first time meeting this person. Maybe your goal should be, do I really want to be this person's friend? Because every relationship starts with friendship. And if you're going in, meeting up a new friend, what do you want to know about them? If you are going to meet a girlfriend for the first time and someone said, oh yeah, girl, you should meet Keisha. She is the bee's knees. Girl, go see her, hang out with her. What would you want to know about Keisha? Keisha, where have you traveled? What kind of food do you like? Where's your favorite concert you've been to? And you're asking questions in that place and space so that you can get to know that person. By the third meetup, maybe your questions or your goals are to know, where do they see this thing going? Ooh, that's crazy. Asking, what are your intentions here? Because if they've taken you to get to know you 3 times, what are their intentions here, you know? So ask the good questions. My philosophy on dating is that don't get confused on accident. Things can get foggy and gray fast. Going on intentional meetups allows you to just keep things very clear. You can't misinterpret someone dance revolutioning on your first meetup as we're going to be married. But you can misinterpret wine, flowers, them picking you up, candlelight, he's smelling all good, he wearing a $5,000 Giorgio Armani suit. That's confusing, and you might fall in love with that man, and he got 4 more dates this week. So I want you to just take these and understand that there's a plan for dating. Do the work. I want you to understand that physicality can't be everything. Boundaries and flags matter. Being single is powerful. Intentional dating creates clarity and growth. And my Jerry Springer final thought would be, you can find all this information and more because y'all, I just wrote a book at offthesidelines.com. I have an intentional dating playbook. I have an intentional dating journal. It's so many things. And I'm hosting intentional dating meetups. So if you want to get coached, you want more information, or you just want to do some fun stuff, like we carry some heavy things, you just want the light stuff, then look for us on Things Hoped For as well. Bye.